First? Okay. Okay. So there's an echo with this mic. I'm going to be talking about Hamlet. And I don't presume that any one of you has read it or knows anything about it, but I believe that if you've grown up in our culture, it's almost impossible to have avoided learning something about him, namely that he's mad. And often, the question of his madness is posed as, is he genuinely mad or is he feigning it? But that, I think, is a misleading way of framing it because it presumes that there are sort of two types of people, one that's genuinely mad and another that's genuinely not, but then has the power to feign it whenever it would like to. Sort of a more representative, probably, picture of the situation is not two types, but there's this thick middle zone where everybody fits in some way or another, and pure madness, say pure non-madness, are ideal or theoretical points marking it off. So instead of asking, is he genuinely mad or just feigning it, a more interesting question is just, what's going on with Hamlet? And a thesis I've liked in the past is just to say that the chaos running through him is that skepticism has infected his soul. But the thesis part of it that I'm going to propose today is formulated differently. It's just that Hamlet's moods do not believe in each other. You may not know about Hamlet that although he's not mad from beginning to the end of the play. In the first 4 acts, he's mad, but in the 5th, something happens, and he's then no longer. And this turning is typical of a tragedy. In that genre, there's normally an about-face, a turning, and in Hamlet, it happens in Hamlet's moods. In the first 4 acts, he's mad, his moods do not believe in one another, and in the last 5th, somehow they begin to believe in one another. And that's sort of my complex combined thesis, that in the first 4 acts, his moods do not believe in one another, then in the 5th they do. And I can remember as a high school student being taught about theses that it's a position, it's something that you have to defend because there's somebody else out there who occupies an opposing position and they could attack it or object to it. And that's a kind of Marshall model for what an essay is. And I'm not adopting it here. This thesis that I've just proposed cannot be objected to. That's why I'm not going to defend it. And the reason why it can't be objected to is that nobody, myself included, understands it yet. The thesis itself is the words that make it up are simple, 1 or 2 syllables, none are complex, none are technical. But how they fit together as a whole is a bit difficult. Just for example, it's commonsensical to say that a person believes in something, but to say that a mood believes in something would demand sort of reconceptualization or a specific kind of conceptualization of what a mood is. But then not all sentences are designed or meant to be understood. The understanding doesn't respond. That doesn't make them bad sentences, but a different kind. And the kind of sentence that the proposition, I just gave it away, the thesis I proposed is a proposition. So imagine at the beginning of it, let's say Hamlet's moods do not believe in each other. Then we can get together and discuss, see what we can make of that. So my intent in what I have to say isn't to persuade you that this thesis is the truth in any way about this play, but it's something to think about. And something peculiar about it, and probably all propositions of a certain kind, is that they have a mystery in the middle of them. And a mystery in a certain sense, that they draw you into an initiation, where as you lift one veil of its sense, you reveal another veil, you lift that, you reveal another. It's an ongoing, open-ended process. And so my intent with what I have to say is not to convince you of anything, but to impart a sense of that mystery. And then also, ultimately, really, my concern isn't with Hamlet, but it's a device to have you think about your moods. Do they believe in each other? Do they not? Have you had an experience of a sea change such that they've gone from not to believing in one another? So now the body of this essay or this talk. And I don't have arguments, but I have questions, because again, my thesis, I don't understand it. If its moods don't believe in each other, how did they get that way? So we know a couple things about Hamlet off the bat, before the play even begins. That's that he's a prince. So he is born into a very high rank. He's used to power. He's got privilege, prestige. We also know that he's a student, and an especially high-achieving student. He's the brightest mind of his time. And so intellectually, he also is used to having power. We also know that just before the play begins, his father dies. Really, never mind the cause of his death. That's not the matter. What does matter is that for anybody, if you lose somebody who's been important to you, what you're faced with is your powerlessness. Your powerlessness to do anything to call them back, to recall them, to speak again to them. So here we have a guy who's grown up in power, is used to it, and finds himself in a situation where he's absolutely powerless. And this causes a big conflict in him, which he reacts to. He can't accept it. We often say people deny death. Like an underlying way of formulating that is that Hamlet, denies his powerlessness before it. He can't stand it. He says, I can't. And he mounts a defense against it. He goes manic. He goes hyperactive. So this way of defending oneself against feeling powerlessness by denying it isn't uncommon. It probably happens in every circumstance where you're faced with mourning, with having to undergo the pain of powerlessness. That's why we say everybody mourns in their own way, or everybody fails to mourn perfectly because people say no, they can't accept it. But what is special about Hamlet is the scale at which he dramatizes this. It's a Shakespearean scale, and it plays out for him in the realm of power. And to really perceive how it works out in the play, you have to have an understanding of how power in his time was configured. And this is a kind of technical detour in what I have to say, but it's necessary. And the claim I make here isn't outside objection, it's historical, so it is exposed to objections. But the claim is that power in his time was not parliamentary democracy like in Canada. It had a king, and really in the underground, it was about dignity. Power was organized, the fundamental concept was dignity. And this is the sort of historical detour. Dignity has a long history. In the ancient Roman period, dignity named your duties, what was expected of you, given your position, given your rank. So if I'm a teacher, certain things are expected of me. If I fulfill those expectations, I've comported myself with dignity. If not, I'm undignified. And this model of dignity does something strange to action because it puts like a central vacancy in the person who acts. There's the real person, and then there's the dignity. And there's this negative space around which these two revolve. So for example, if an order comes from the office of a senator, and that order is criminal, who's at fault? The person occupying the office, the actual person, or the office of the senator? The concept of dignity makes it difficult or impossible to attribute moral responsibility to official action, but that's not a problem because the device, dignity, isn't meant to attribute moral responsibility. It's meant to organize the functioning of power. So Roman authors were aware of this, so when it came to situations in life where something more moral was called upon, they stated that dignity was not appropriate. So faced with extreme circumstances, extreme experiences, love, death, dignity is not possible. This extreme situation doesn't permit this dignified compromise, this gap. Each person is exposed, unshielded by their dignity. And then in the medieval period, this concept was developed so that dignity didn't name just a set of duties, but a body, an immortal body. So the best study of this is a book called The King's Two Bodies. So many high-ranking members of the political order had a dignity, but the single most important and highly invested dignity of all of them was the king's. And so when the king died, his mortal body died, the second body, his dignity, there was a big ordeal about how it's transferred on to his successor. and how that person is invested with it. So here's Hamlet. This is his situation. He grew up in the king's castle where everyone has these two bodies. That's the norm that he knows. And he knows that it's by virtue of these two bodies that these people possess and exercise official power. But after his father dies, he's thrown. It's as though these two bodies fall apart and everyone in his eyes becomes double. His moods, this deep structure in his personality, they stop believing in one another. That's the crisis. That's my claim. And so what we see him doing in Acts 1-4 are his mother becomes the object of his erotic fascination at the same time that he devalues and degrades her for having sexual desires. His father is a dead man and Hercules. It's complicated with his uncle Claudius, but because Hamlet believes that his mom may have been having an affair with him that dates back a long way, he wonders if his real father is actually the person he's believed was his uncle. So this one person's his uncle and his father. His girlfriend Ophelia, he expresses his devotion to her and then denies that he ever did. So he fluctuates violently back and forth between these two. From, I'll murder Claudius, I won't. I'll be, I won't be. And eventually, as this fluctuates violently again and again, you get the sense that he's not even sure if he's alive or if he's dead. And then, that's Acts 1-4. Act 5, the change happens. What happens there? He meets the grave digger, someone who belongs to a life outside the court with no dignities. Someone who has just his one body, and this fascinates Hamlet. He calls him absolute, a person with a bone in his back that you can't pass your hand through. They have an exchange that's the first actually conversational one that Hamlet has in the entire play, and he's immediately rewarded with the skull of the man who entertained him as a child. Eryx. He looks into the skull's eyes, and he sees aspects of maternity and paternity, these two bodies which then, instead of falling apart, fall together. Hamlet's beginning to get better. His moods are beginning to believe in one another. He's then invited to take part in what's presented at first as a friendly duel with Laertes, who is the brother of Hamlet's now dead ex-girlfriend Ophelia. Hamlet knows it's a trap, but he doesn't refuse to appear. He wants to make amends for the trouble he caused in his period of madness, and he accepts what fate awaits him in a speech that mirrors the to be or not to be speech, but which ends, let be, a new figure, a figure that marries agency and patience. And then at the duel, he apologizes to Laertes, explains that he'd been mad, but he's not anymore, and he hates that he caused any trouble. And Laertes responds that he's satisfied in his nature, in his real body, but that in his terms of honor, that is, in his dignity, he stands aloof. So, at this point, near the very end, Hamlet's moods have begun to believe in one another, but the world he lives in is still dignity-driven. So at this point, where everyone could disembark from the tragedy train, they all chug along to the final massacre. Now, I'm about to draw to the ending, but just to recap what I've said, I diagnosed Hamlet as having moods that don't believe in each other. The ideology of their disbelief in each other is rooted in his reaction to his father's death, and he acts his symptoms out in the field of dignified power, where the two bodies fall apart again and again, and he gets obsessed with their falling apart. In Act 5, he changes. In his conversation with the gravedigger, his moves start believing in each other. He's rewarded with a revisit to the site of the cause of his madness, the death of a significant other, in this case, Yorick. This time, the two bodies don't fall apart, but they fall together. And so our diagnosis of Hamlet changes. His moods no longer don't believe in each other. By Act 5, they've started to believe in each other. So this long-ish commentary on Hamlet isn't primarily about the play. That's not my intent. It's been an attempt to entertain the idea that moods cannot believe in each other, that that's a possibility, and that can change. They can start to believe in one another. We've already heard tonight about the difficulties of growing up, and a picture I had of this as a child was that it's a movement of incremental increase in personal power. But that's just part of the story. The other part is that we commonly find ourselves powerless, and that in these situations, the hardest thing to do is nothing. To not deny the reality, to find a way of becoming capable of one's incapacity, able of one's powerlessness. And I propose that this paradoxical growth, capable of incapacity, able of powerlessness, takes place in the relationships one's moods have with one another. Now, happy, sad, angry, excited, confused are not moods. Those are emotions or affects. A mood is what opens when you find yourself absolutely powerless. They have durations and can mark off a phase of life, a period, an epoch, an era. A mood is a season. It comes in a series. If moods believe in each other, they believe in each other across time. Time clues up. In a moment, a period of the past becomes available for remembrance, like a bone recovered from the graveyard. And when this happens, you can either believe in it or deny it. And thank you for your attention.